A new paradigm in fitness. Tactical fitness for the tactical athlete. That's the topic of this short video. And it's the article that accompanies this video in my newsletter. Hi, my name is Brian Schwager. I'm the founder of the Wellness Movement Center. And I'm here to talk a little bit more about this new breed of athlete that's been evolving over the last decade. You know, a lot of fitness concepts have come and gone. I've seen them all in my 41 years in the industry. But this topic, this breed of athlete is different. Not just because of the type of jobs these tactical athletes have, but the amount of demands that are on the body that are different than a sports athlete. The tactical athlete is the firefighter, is the emergency medical technician, is anybody in law enforcement, all aspects of military, but then there are higher branches of both law enforcement and military like SWAT, and then of course all aspects of special operations like the Navy SEALs, pararescue, etc. The demands on these men and women are incredible, mentally and physically. So it's a game changer in the entire industry. The way we are preparing these athletes for their jobs, if they're first going into them, or if they're already in, we're changing the way we're training them. The new science is showing that when we are preparing for this type of job, the demands are very, very unusual on the body. And what I mean for that is, if you're training a sports athlete, like I've trained many sports athletes, most of those are seasonal. So there is a time off period where they can do other things, maybe play another sport, but the point is there's a time off period. With the tactical athlete, you know, their jobs are required at a high demand all the time. So their bodies always have to be prepared. And the other thing is injuries. So being prepared is the key. I've always said the more you're prepared, the less you despair. Because when you're prepared, your body is ready. When you're prepared mentally, your mind is ready for the activity. And how you prepare the body is only going to be based on your weakest links. And the only way you're going to know if you have weak links is to be properly and comprehensively assessed. Now, I've had the opportunity the last 9 months to train a young man, a former collegiate athlete for the Navy SEALs. He wanted to meet with me and wanted me to pick up where he left off on his start for this for his career. He was going to give himself a couple of years to get ready, which really makes sense. Now, being a former collegiate athlete, he is very well versed on strength and conditioning and high intensity training. However, this is a game changer. So the first thing I wanted to do was assess all aspects of his wellness and his movement, like I do with all my clients. Remember, I have 4 principles that I stand by. Those are the 4 pillars to the entire business. I want to know, number 1, principle number 1, what your emotional health rating is. How are you handling stress? Because that affects the entire body. I want to know how you're sleeping. That's principle number 2, biochemical health. Because that affects how you're repairing and restoring. And it affects your hormone levels. I want to know what you're eating and when you're eating and how effectively you're digesting your food and how much water you're drinking. Because without raw materials, you can't rebuild. And without proper digestion, well, we know what can happen there. I mean, digestion can even affect your stabilization system that protects your spine and your joints. And lastly, I wanted to look at all aspects of his movement. I wanted to look at comparative range of motion, meaning if he has flexibility imbalances from one side of the body to the other. I wanted to check all aspects of his core, including his diaphragm. I also wanted to check his movement competency using the functional movement screen, which is a rating and ranking system that is being used by the NFL and the military right now. Overall, with all 4 principles, we had rated him, and then what we start to do is lower the ratings that are high, or raise the ratings that were low in his movement. In other words, I want a high rating of movement competency for training, but I want a low rating of wellness lifestyle so that he can perform and repair and keep going. Remember, your body, no matter what you're training for, you're not just training your body, you have to train all systems within the body. The two most important systems is your nervous system and your hormonal system. For without those running operatively, the rest of the systems will compensate. So as I was collecting my data, assessing him in detail, and reading a lot about the tactical athlete, I was happy to find that there is more data now. There is more research that has been conducted over the last 6 years that are qualifying this. The standards are now going to change across the board because we need better baselines for these types of athletes. We need a different set of baselines altogether. The standards that the military is raising they're raising their standards, is what I'm trying to say. And that's a good thing, because the demands on these type of athletes are incredible mentally and physically. I mean, I can't explain it other than saying that their jobs are life dependent and they're 24/7. Now, I've trained high intensity myself. I'm a mixed martial artist, I have a background in mixed martial arts, trained with combat martial arts, trained professionals, and been around that group for years, and then have trained a whole array of athletes. But when we talk about the tactical athlete, I had to really get the science down pat for this guy. And we had to do it in a way that was safe and effective. And we had to build it over a period of time so that I can get him ready for his qualifications. And not only do I want him to make that, but I want him to do it right. I wanted to do it in the ideal form and with the least compensation as possible. Now, I didn't do this alone either. I worked directly with my chiropractic neurologist. He and I teamed up with this athlete for the last 9 months. So when you're training as often as he is, when he would check in with me, the first question I asked him is, how's your sleep? How's the stress level at home? What's going on in life? Because the better he can use his mind here in this environment, not just the Wellness Movement Center, but in our safe environment, the better it'll work when he has to get into the real world. Now, the physical part, well, he had a good base of support. He came out of, collegiate football. I just made all kinds of functional, modifications based on what his requirements are going to be for that particular job compared to maybe a firefighter or, somebody in law enforcement. Sure, there's a lot of carryover in functional training, but there are some specificity differences. His training at the beginning, I'm going to put some video footage up here of me training, doing some tactical training systems. I went through it myself for 8 weeks, and let me tell you, it beat the hell out of me. But, I'm 57 years old, and the type of tactical training I did, that was only like phase 1. His phase 3 and his phase 4 were outdoors. We live in the Blue Ridge Mountains here in Asheville, North Carolina. So I told him to drive up into the mountains, so he's 4,000 or 5,000 feet above sea level, where the oxygen level is different. I said, you need to train up there, so when you're down here or you're down at sea level, you're going to have the greater demand of oxygen consumption. And when he went up there, I told him, I said, you got to pack 80, 90, 100 pounds on your back, because you're carrying sometimes between 75 and 125 pounds worth of equipment. See what I mean? It's got to be the carryover. It's got to be the real deal. I mean, doing squats is great. I mean, if you're a heavy squatter, doing deadlifts and all kinds of cool functional training, swinging sledgehammers, flipping tires like I had him doing, that's cool too. But it's got to meet the demands. Trudging through water, working out in the rain. Right now the weather's changing. It's getting colder. Get out there and get experienced to these different stressors on the body. Climb ropes, climb trees, and carry bodies. Again, I've tried to make it as specific as possible so that the carryover was about the same. As I was saying, this is an example of a phase 2 tactical training system I came up with. This stepping back with overhead press works out really well for what he'll need. He needs a lot of power from the hips, But combining power with pulling might be a really good idea, since he'll be in unusual positions where he'll need that hip power and that pulling strength. And of course, the pushing pattern. We got ourselves some good cross crawl or bear crawl push-ups. And I also created what we call a combat crawl exercise that I put in his program as well. You know, like I said, this is just phase 2. A lot of phase 3 and phase 4 were done outdoors or in other functional environments using different types of equipment, from ropes to logs to sledgehammers to flipping tires to climbing to trudging, wind sprints. I had it all built in, and all done with intelligence in mind. Again, you know, using the cardio aspect of my shadow boxing to keep the heart rate up. There are times where I'll use pads and other implements, but for the sake of that training that day, I just did some shadow boxing for my 20 seconds of explosive cardio work. Pulling from all different angles, you know, what you're seeing is just a smidgen of what I've designed for him. This is more designed for me, being 57 here. He did a lot of these, but I made him 10 times harder, of course, I had to. So this just gives you an example. If you're in law enforcement, a firefighter, somebody that's a paramedic or in some sort of emergency medical technical job in the field, this sort of idea is right for you. I'm Brian Schwager. Thank you very much for listening. And if you have a desire to, you know, do the tactical training challenge, if you will, just, you know, there's information in the newsletter to help you get started, or just give me a call here at the Wellness Movement Center. It's been my pleasure. I love this stuff. You guys have a great day. Bye for now.